Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 14 Developer Beta 3 and Public Beta 3 have been out for a few days, and I've been using it primarily on my iPhone 11 Pro Max, as well as my 2020 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and I also have it on the iPhone 7 here. So I wanted to talk about how it's been for me, and then talk about how it's been for you based off the YouTube community poll, and talk about battery and other issues as well, and when we may see an iOS 14 Beta 4 and other releases as well. And so the first thing is my iPhone has been pretty good. I know some people are having issues. I'll talk about that in a moment, but in general, my iPhone is doing pretty well. I haven't had many issues, but I did have my AirPods Pro kind of just disappear off of my Bluetooth connection. So I had to repair it. It's not a big deal, but it was kind of odd. I had to reset the AirPods Pro, and then they worked fine. I've had no issues with performance. I've really had no bugs. I know some people are having issues with some of the widgets I'll talk about in a moment, and you'll see if we go in here. It seems to be up to date on the weather widget for me. I'm really not seeing any issues as far as apps opening, performance, or anything else. However, I am having issues with my iPad, specifically with notes and sometimes using the Magic Keyboard. So on my iPad Pro, let me rotate the screen here. Let me go into Notes. So within Notes, I'm having an issue where I just can't enter text, whether I'm using the Magic Keyboard or just the iPad itself. I can't enter text, and I've found this to be the case many times using Notes today when I was taking notes for this video, for example. And so I wasn't able to enter text. I actually had to hard reboot the iPad, then I could enter text, but then it would only work on one window and not split view, and it's been really buggy. It's not buggy on my iPhone, but just my iPad, so I think that's kind of strange. Now on my iPhone, if I go into Notes, you'll see that the text works just fine. I can type hi or whatever I want to say. How are you today? And it works just fine. For some reason, it doesn't work well on my iPad. So that's kind of odd. However, everyone seems to be saying that performance is really good. That's including the iPhone 7. So even the older devices, it seems to be okay. I've had no issues going into different apps. I've had no hiccups, no slowdowns, nothing at all. It seems to be working just fine. So you'll see it's zipping right along. So I'm pretty impressed with the performance. But many of you are having issues with everything from widgets to some other things. Now, the first thing is, before I talk about any of that, many people are concerned and not updating to Beta 3 because of 3D Touch. Apple said it's a known issue that it's temporarily disabled. The keyword being temporarily. That means Apple will bring it back. So on the iPhone 7, like this one, if I press and hold, the menu will come up. It's just not using the pressure layer to do it. So you don't lose any features, but it just means that they had to turn off that pressure layer. Maybe they were having issues and Beta 3 code wasn't working on it, so they've temporarily disabled it. So that's for the iPhone 6S, 6S Plus, 7, 7 Plus, and 8 and 8 Plus. Anything that uses a pressure layer under the display isn't working right now. That's okay because it will work properly in the future. iPhone 10, of course, 10s also have that pressure layer. So it will work in the future. Right now it's not, but you can still use the menus and everything. Now, as far as issues people are seeing, well, a lot of people are saying the clock widget isn't working well. So if you're using that clock widget, they're saying that it's losing time. So if we press and hold, I'll add the clock widget here. We'll wait here, we'll add the clock widget. They're saying that it loses time when they're using it. So I have this widget here, we'll add it here, and you'll see there's some weird bugs going on. But if I go back home, slide back over, it works. People are saying that it's losing time, and this may be because Apple does not update the widgets in real time per their code right now. Now, I'm sure they'll have something that will resolve this in the future, but with Beta 3, it's a little bit buggy. Also, a lot of people are having issues with the weather widget not showing up. In fact, when I first installed Beta 3, the weather widget was completely black. I couldn't get it to come back. I had to delete the widget, go into the app, then re-add the widget, and then it seemed to work for me. So if you're having that issue, try that, try rebooting, but it should work. Other people are having issues with Siri shortcuts. So if you're using shortcuts and you're having an issue with it, well, some people are having issues with this, but others are not. But most people are saying that if the shortcuts are working, they can't use Siri with it. So maybe they want to use Siri to activate one of these shortcuts and it's just not working for them. So keep that in mind. Again, it is a beta. And then others are saying that banking apps are not working. So if you have specific banking apps, Mine seem to be working okay, but if you have banking apps that aren't working, they may be working in the future, but just keep in mind some apps don't work. Early on, Pokemon Go didn't work, some others didn't work, and it still may not be working now, so it just depends. Others are having issues with Safari crashing with video on websites. That seems to be more specific to the iPad. I personally haven't seen that. And then others are saying there's odd behavior with VoiceOver. And then a lot of other people are saying it's great. But just keep in mind, that's why this is a beta. The idea is to figure out what's going on, what devices are experiencing this problem, because there's millions and millions of them out there, and Apple's trying to figure out what's going on, maybe a specific year with a specific CPU in it, like the iPhone 7 is having issues, or maybe it's just there's some weird bug with the widgets and Apple's still working on it. Just keep in mind it's a beta, and even though we're in a later beta than we were last week, we may still have more issues than we did with beta 1 or 2. Now let's take a look at the battery. Battery has not been great for me. It's been about the same as beta 1 and 2, but if we go into the battery, my battery health is at 96%, as I said the other day. It's pretty normal given the age of this phone at this point. 80% after 2 years is normal, and as you can see here, the other day or yesterday, I had 4 hours and 11 minutes of screen on time, 2 hours and 2 minutes of screen off time, and used 75% of my battery. That's actually pretty awful for this phone. If we take a look at, let's take a look at 2 days ago, 3 hours and 56 minutes of screen on time, 5 hours and 23 minutes of screen off time, and I was using about 60% of my battery. That's better, but it's still not what I was getting with beta or iOS 13.6, for example. So that's okay. It's an early beta. Developers are going to focus more on battery once they wrap up their code and get things fixed as far as bugs. So just keep that in mind. When you're using a beta, don't expect good battery life. It's just not something to look forward to when you're going to an early beta of a next version. So as we get closer to the final release, which will probably be in September or October at this point, it's hard to say. Look for that to get more stable and to have more battery life overall. Now, before we take a look at the YouTube community poll and some of the comments, iOS 13.6.1 may be coming out this week or next, although there's no confirmation or no internal information that I have on that. But the reason I say that is Apple stopped signing iOS 13.5.1, meaning you can no longer downgrade to it. They won't allow it. So that usually means there's going to be another version, but there's no guarantee of that. But that's generally what it means based on all the data from before. Now, iOS 14 Beta 4 may come out this week if Apple switches to a weekly cycle as they do later in the cycles. Last year, they switched to weekly cycles around Beta 4, so it's possible we'll have that, although because we may not see a final release later in the year than normal, or until later in the year than normal, expect maybe we're still on a 2-week cycle. We'll know that for sure next week, of course. Now, as far as all of the issues mentioned, here are all of the issues mentioned, and as well as all the issues, here are all the devices that were mentioned in the YouTube community poll comments. So thanks to everyone that commented and left what device you're using. Now let's take a look at the poll. Now at the time of this video, there's 6.3K votes, or 6,300 plus votes, so I appreciate everyone that voted, and you'll see 21% of you have said that iOS 14 Beta 3 is great. Only 2% are saying it's terrible, but 16% of you are saying you have some bugs. This is a little bit higher than we had before. So combine that with terrible, we have about 18% of you that are actually using this that are saying it's got a bunch of bugs, which we kind of know this from posts online. Also, 45% of you have not updated yet, so you're sitting on public versions or older versions, and then 15% of you consistently are using Android. So thanks again for voting, even though this video is only about iOS. Now, there are 260 comments, of which I took all of the information I shared earlier. Let's take a look at some of them. And the first one says, can you use widgets or not? Well, you can use them. They're updating sort of in real time. They're not working 100% yet, but when it comes out to the public, it should work just fine. So it seems to be okay. iPhone 11 Pro, finally the storage bug is fixed and less freezes and bugs found throughout the OS. Overall, seems like a good build and looking forward to the final GM. That's a little ways away, but it's good so far. I'm pretty impressed with how stable it is given how early on it is. iPhone 7, better than the first betas. I'm using it on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Some bugs from the previous version have been fixed, but there are other ones which remain. The music widget on my phone still doesn't work. My bank app or my bank app neither, and the battery is draining a bit faster than in Beta 2. Pro Max and the 2018 iPad Pro, great. Clock widget has bad batteries and keeps losing time. No major issues in this one yet. And I'm wondering if you're saying the clock widget is actually using more battery and you found that it's not using as much when you're not using it. That would be an interesting experiment to run. I'm using iOS 14 Beta 3 on iPhone 11. I'm just having problems with widgets. Really great on the iPhone 6s Plus. And it's always great to see that it's working well on older phones as well. And again, pretty good on my iPhone 7, but still a few crashes here and there, albeit not as many as the last two betas. Every time a new update comes out, it crashes my iPhone SE 2nd gen, and it has to attempt to get my data back. It has so far gotten it back both times, but still shouldn't happen. I'm using iOS 14 Public Beta 3. And that's the danger of using a beta sometimes. Occasionally it will crash when you're trying to install an update. And many people are having some issues installing this update as compared to beta 1 or 2. So I'm not sure what that's about. I forgot to mention that, but some people are having issues with that. Honestly, battery life is better than iOS 13 on my 7 Plus. Home screen widgets don't update for me. I have stocks, clocks, and podcast widgets. Otherwise, it's pretty stable. Battery isn't good for the iPhone XR. I'm really hoping we see a battery fix for Beta 4. I wouldn't count on it until we're closer to maybe Beta 7 or something along those lines. iPhone XS here, clock widget. The clock widget is not working for me. I had to delete it from my home screen. Time does not synchronize. Sometimes when changing cities, the clock doesn't start moving, and eventually it gets several minutes behind the real time. Same thing with the world clock widget. Phone restarts. Sometimes the springboard crashes and restarts the phone, just by doing nothing. Even at the lock screen, I've had crashes, phone restarting while using the app library, while editing the clock widget, and once the phone restarted while searching for something on Tweetbot. I never had any of these problems with Beta 2 or 1, so terrible for me, thinking about going back to iOS 13 until Beta 4. It's running incredibly well on my iPhone 7 and iPhone SE 1st gen. I haven't experienced any major issues so far, only a few small bugs. Battery life is amazing on my iPhone 7 with 94% max capacity, and way better than iOS 13.6 on my iPhone SE with 86% max capacity. Overall, absolutely satisfied with iOS 14 so far. iPhone 10, clock widget freezes and shows the wrong time. In shortcuts, Wi-Fi isn't available. These are the only problems I have. Otherwise, I'm very satisfied with it. Very good on my iPhone XR. Battery life isn't the greatest, but that is to be expected. Great videos. Thank you. For me, it's way worse than Public Beta 2. The weather widget is gone on my iPad Pro 10.5. Siri shortcuts does not work with Hey, and then when you say the word Siri at all, and even sometimes gives me errors when using manually. It sometimes randomly rotates, and the iPad crashes when I add two widgets to the home screen and add them to Always Shown window, but at least the storage bug is gone. Been using the iPhone 8, having issues with the clock widget. The clock keeps freezing and stops moving. Have to restart the phone to refresh the time. Using VoiceOver, the native Notes app no longer works properly. You can't enter text or interact with the note. The same issue I'm having. And then it has been nice. And so it seems to be not as good as iOS 14 Beta 2, but again, there's more features. Some things are better, some aren't. I would say performance is better. That's it for iOS 14 Beta 3. Now, again, like I said, look for iOS 14 Beta 4 maybe as soon as this week, but who knows at this point. Apple's been changing things up a lot, but based on what they did last year, it could be as soon as this week. Now, other than that, if you found anything I didn't mention in this particular video as far as bugs, let me know in the comments below, and also new features that I didn't mention in the first video and the follow-up video I did with more new features yesterday. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.